Bro, did you hear the new Smash came out? Oh no, I didn't. That's awesome. How many characters are It's finally here, guys. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. 75 characters, 108 stages, over 1,000 music tracks, and even a new adventure mode. It's everything a hardcore Smash fan could want. Or is it? Now don't get me wrong, this game is fucking amazing. Best Smash game by far. But I feel like a few franchises aren't represented very well by their characters. I mean, look at Snake. He uses almost all explosives. Snake's whole deal is stealth, which means being quiet. I can't think of anything more not quiet than Fox. I was really hoping they were going to redo him closer to PM and give him his Trent gun or something, but he's almost identical to Brawl. Another example would be the Miis. I think a lot of people predicted the Miis would be in Smash 4, including me, but they were executed completely differently than anyone expected. I thought the Miis were going to represent the Wii series of games, like Wii Sports and Wii Play, but they turned out to be more like discount fighters. Okay, so those were a few small examples of movesets, but now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to address the main point of this video. There are two entire franchises in Smash that do a horrible job at representing their games. Those games are Zelda and Fire Emblem. We're going to not only look into why these games are so poorly represented, but also how it could possibly be solved. Now, obviously the entire theme of Ultimate is everyone is here, so I wouldn't want anyone removed or anything, but we're going to explore how Smash could have handled these series from the beginning of the franchise as well as now. Let's hit it! Alright, take a guess. How many Zelda characters do you think there are in Smash? The answer is 2. There are 2 Zelda characters in Smash Bros. Check it out. Smash 64 we get Link. Okay, that's 1. You know, for the first game that's fair. Then we get to Melee and get Zelda/Sheik, Ganondorf, and Young Link. Now, to be fair, going from 1 to 5 in the span of one game is pretty good on the surface. However, Zelda and Sheik are 1 character and counts as 1 slot. And Ganon was an afterthought and just a Falcon clone. Young Link is as clone as a character can be. It's Link, but younger, and is almost not even a character. So really, only 2 original Zelda reps for Melee, even though there are technically 5 representatives for Zelda. It's nice that Sheik and Ganon are in and adding to the roster, and we have 5 Zelda faces, but still it's really just 2.5 at best original characters. Brawl comes and we replace Young Link with Toon Link. Other than that, no new characters. Ganon got tweaked a little bit, Toon Link at least looks more different than Link, and Zelda and Sheik are a little more fleshed out now, but overall, Brawl got 0 new reps. Fast forward to Smash 4, and Zelda and Sheik are now separated. Their movesets are altered slightly, but not by much, each just has a fairly unique down B now. Ganon is a tiny bit more different again, but other than that, we didn't even get a new character for Smash 4. Brawl at least replaced Young Link with Toon Link, but for Smash 4 all they did was separate Zelda and Sheik and call it a new character. Basically making Zelda the worst character in the game. Now back to the present. Everyone is here, which means we have Link, Young Link, and Toon Link in the same game. Finally, they updated Ganon to represent himself much better, and he's no longer a Falcon clone. He still shares like 4 to 5 moves with him, but he's much different overall. Passable. Thank God they had the foresight to make Link Breath of the Wild Link as well, because 3 Links is already too much without all of them being clones of each other. Okay, so what they did with making each Zelda character represent a different Zelda game was really smart. A huge step in the right direction. But the fact of the matter is we haven't gotten a brand new Zelda character since Melee, which considering Zelda is at least Nintendo's 2nd biggest property, is pretty sad. Mario, on the contrary, has 11 reps, 4 of which are villains, depending on if you count Wario as a villain. And if Waluigi gets in, which I believe he will, that'll be 12 reps and 5 villains. Zelda only has 6 reps, 3 of which are Link clones, and 1 villain, being Ganondorf. Even though I'm willing to concede that all the Zelda characters are better than they've ever been, and that Sheik, Zelda, and Ganon are all unique enough to count as an actual slot now, I can't help but feel like Nintendo is sleeping on the potential of Zelda's roster. Why does it seem like every Zelda rep has to be like a main character? Mario has characters like Dr. Mario, Rosalina who appears in 2 main games, freaking Bowser Jr., and even a random enemy like Piranha Plant. But Zelda can't escape the 3 holders of the Triforce for some reason. There are so many cool candidates for new characters, and best of all, most of them are villains. Girahim would be sick, Vaati would be sick, and everyone and their grandmas prayed for Skull Kid. But even further, why not get one of the hundreds of races in the world of Hyrule? We could have a Goron, or a Zora, or a Rito. Imagine getting Medley as the Wind Waker rep. Medley is super popular and could have a really unique moveset. Lots of wing-based attacks sort of similar to Palutena, and obviously multiple jumps. Her down B could pull out the harp and reflect things or something. Some of the easiest to include would be any of the 4 champions from Breath of the Wild, because all of them are so fleshed out and have so many cool abilities. Even though I can see any of them being added easily, I think the easiest of all would be Daruk. A Goron could roll around, he'd be super strong, he'd be another heavy to the roster, maybe use bombs or rocks in some way. He could use his Boulder Crusher and obviously have Daruk's protection. But going back to the villains of Zelda, since Ultimate seems to be giving off a pretty big villains theme with all the newcomers, why do we only have one from Zelda? Vaati could have tons of wind-based attacks. His up B could transform him into his eye form to flap up really high, he could possibly turn people to stone, similar to grounding, and all kinds of goofy shit. He would also be a Minish and 4 Swords rep. Besides, he just looks like he fits with Smash. Even though Girahim as Skull Kid would be amazing, I feel like Vaati has more going for him than the other two. Sakurai could totally whip up a moveset for each of them, but really a lot more of it would be freestyled. Girahim could use his diamond things and maybe have a counter where he catches your attack and freezes you or something, and Skull Kid would just use magic and shit. Probably the Ocarina in some way as well. And his final smash would be the Moonfalling, of course. There are plenty of characters that aren't just blank Link. But like hell, there's so many more interesting options if we have to have more Links. Like, why not have Midna/Wolf Link? At least then it's a new character. I'd even take Linkle over Toon Link, who at least uses crossbows and shit. Or here's a cool idea, how about Fierce Deity Link instead of Young Link as the Majora rep? Then he'd be more of a greatsword/magic user, kinda like Cloud I guess. But it would still be way cooler than having all these cookie cutter Links. But since the theme of this game is everyone is here, and I really like that, how could we make the characters we have more interesting? What if Young Link, instead of being a carbon copy of Link, was like Pokemon Trainer and transformed between Deku Scrub Zora and Goron Link? Or what if Toon Link had more weapons from his respective games? Like maybe having the Megaton Hammer, or Ice Arrows, or Grappling Hook, or even the Deku Leaf. Maybe that could be his neutral B and just pressing it throughout a big gust of wind, and then if you were in the air and held it down, you could like glide. Another fun idea would be throwing in Tingle or Groose as a joke character, which I think we all know if they could pull off, people would love. Which would also give us a Skyward Sword rep as well. I just can't believe we didn't get even one new Zelda character for Ultimate, or even Smash 4, honestly. Like, even Fire Emblem outnumbers Zelda at this point. But I guess that brings us to the second topic of the video. Now, where I've seen little to no complaints about Zelda in Smash, we've all seen everybody complain about Fire Emblem. I mean, like, a lot of people forget that every game since Melee had 2 Fire Emblem reps until Smash 4. We went from 2 in Brawl to fucking 6 in Smash 4. 4 new Fire Emblem characters in one game. 2 of them were DLC. It's safe to say a lot of people are sick of Fire Emblem at this point. Here's the thing. Fire Emblem is the absolute worst represented franchise in Smash. Like, no contest. I don't understand what they were thinking when choosing who gets picked for Fire Emblem. I don't understand how we have 7 Fire Emblem reps now, and every single one uses a sword. Now, I know many of you may not have played a Fire Emblem game other than maybe Heroes, but pretty much like the main core battle mechanic of the game is the weapons triangle. Swords beat axes, axes beat spears, and spears beat swords. But the fun doesn't stop there. We got archers, Pegasus and Wyvern riders, priests, pirates, thieves, mages, mercenaries, hunters, cavaliers, knights, generals, ballisticians, and tons more. But who do they choose? Swords! Everybody uses a sword. Poke, poke, stab, stab. You got a fucking sword. Now Robin and Corrin do something a little cooler. Robin is a tactician and uses spellbooks and 2 swords. And Corrin is a half Manakit, which is like a dragon person. So he gets all kind of neat pin moves and Dragon Fang and wings and shit. However, even these 2, although they break the mold a bit, still feel very much like Marth. All the Fire Emblem characters are painfully similar, even the ones who aren't clones/echoes. Fire Emblem has even grown a little bit of a stigma online just because people are sick of seeing every other new character be Marth number 6. But you know what's an even bigger sin to me? How do we have 7 Fire Emblem reps and not a single one is a villain? There are plenty to choose from, so why? But let's take a step back for a second and imagine a world where Marth was the only sword fighter. Maybe Roy or Lucina could be an echo for him, but that's as far as it goes. Imagine instead of Roy and Ike and Chrom and even Robin, we got new characters. Not just pretty blue-haired swordsman number 5. Let's start with Melee. Now I know even Marth was sort of a last-minute decision in general and was almost going to be Japan exclusive. And Roy was just his clone because why not throw him in, right? However, let's just ignore the circumstances of his inclusion and imagine if we looked at it differently. Instead of having a Marth clone in Melee, what if we got the protagonist of another game? Or even better, if we got someone slightly less in the spotlight. What if we actually got someone from the weapon triangle, like Barst, an axe user in Shadow Dragon? Barst is a woodcutter that joins your party fairly early and would be infinitely more interesting than Roy.
I'm just a guy who chops wood.
He would be a really up-close and personal fighter, somewhat slow but strong. He could throw axes, probably something of Simon's axe and Link's boomerang combined. Another great choice would be Fire Emblem's first villain in Smash, Alvis.
My hellfire will consume everything.
There are 2 versions of Alvis, one as a sage and then later as an emperor, but in both versions he uses fire magic. His main way of attacking is Volflame, one of the 12 holy weapons from Genealogy of the Holy War. He also has a silver sword at his side which could possibly be used to a lesser degree, just to mix up his moveset. But he mostly used fire-based magic, almost a Robin but for Melee. Probably the best option in my opinion though, would be Ephraim, one of the 2 sibling protagonists in Fire Emblem, the Sacred Stones. Not only would Ephraim be a lot more recognizable than Barst or Alvis, but he probably has an easier moveset to create. Ephraim's main form of attacking is a lance called Regenlith, which again, is something on the triangle other than a dang sword. The only thing really close to a lance user in Smash that we have is Palutena, and even that is just like a staff. He could throw javelins, he'd have great range, and maybe he could also have a tipper mechanic at the tip of his lance? I don't know, not necessary, but maybe? Great, so we're already looking 100 times better. Now let's go to Brawl. First of all, Roy was cut because he was too similar to Marth, and Ike as it was already super similar to both of them. However, we still only had 2 Fire Emblem reps and Ike was different enough to not be called a clone. Honestly, he was sort of a Dr. Marth, mostly the same except heavier/stronger and a few different moves. Ephraim might have been different enough to have 3 Fire Emblem reps for Brawl, but even if not, we know he'd come back eventually. Now ideally we'd have an axe user come in to complete the triangle, right? Even if Ephraim got removed, and we could have my boy Barst fill that role, which I would love, a better fit would probably be Hector from the Blazing Blade. Hector already looks really similar to Ike and could honestly play similarly to him too. People have even modded him onto Ike in Smash 4. Hector is good friends with Eliwood, Roy's father, and is an important unit in the prequel to Roy's game. He could play the same way I described Barst, with a little bit of Ike flair. He could use Armads, the legendary axe that he acquires in the game, and possibly have a really strong move that also damages himself slightly, since it's said whoever uses the axe will die on the battlefield. Now we're getting into the rough part. As we touched on earlier, Smash 4 got 4 new Fire Emblem reps, 2 of which were DLC. So assuming Ephraim came back as DLC instead of Roy, we technically have 3 slots. But at this point, I'm just going to say fuck it and list off a bunch of characters that would be cool to have instead of what we got. So, number 1 that would have been cool if we had to have another sword user, and someone who's actually been on people's radar a bit for Ultimate, would be Zelgis, aka the Black Knight, from Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. Although not the main villain in those games, he's probably the most famous. I mean, he even got added to the background of Castle Siege and now has a Mii outfit for Ultimate. I honestly can't think of another villain in the franchise that's more recognizable than the Black Knight. I would imagine he'd work similarly to Ike, but even heavier and stronger. Although he'd use a sword, it would be a great sword. After all, the Black Knight's sword, Alendite, is very similar to Ragnall, Ike's sword. He could probably have lots of super armor on certain moves as well. The only problem with him is it's a little harder to think of a moveset for him though. But I'm sure Sakurai could fucking whatever. He's Sakurai. He can do it. Now, as fucking metal as it would be to have Catria, Cordelia, or even Minerva as a character riding in on Pegasus or Wyverns, I don't think it's incredibly realistic. Even Ridley has trouble fitting on the screen, and they shrunk him down a shit ton as it is. However, what's much more realistic is having a class character rather than focusing on the weapon triangle. Like, how do we have no archers in Smash in general? And no, the Pits and Links don't freaking count with their wimpy neutral bees. I mean like an actual archer whose moveset revolves around it. There are tons of archers from Fire Emblem to choose from, and most would be valid, but I think one of the best would be Nami from the Sacred Stones. Now you could argue we should mix and match most games so we can represent as many games as possible, but I mean whatever, any archer would do. I just think she's rad, so we'll roll with it. A good way to think of how she would play is something akin to Monster Hunter bow users. Obviously her moveset will revolve around the bow. Maybe she could use different types of arrows that do different things. Maybe she pulls out the sniper bow for her smash attacks, and they go really far. And for a lot of her up-close attacks, she could swing an arrow like a knife. Something like that. And my last pick for a Fire Emblem rep, probably to replace Corrin as DLC, I'm going to introduce a crazy idea. What if we got either Flora or Felicia from Fire Emblem Fates? First of all, and this is a big first of all, I mean, for crying out loud, dude, they're maids. People go nuts over those characters. The reason why I'm not sure between Flora or Felicia is even though Felicia is a better fighter overall, and more waifu overall as well, Flora has ice powers, which could be really interesting. But the bottom line is, it's a ninja maid with potential ice magic. She could have shuriken and kunai with or without ice, as well as general ninja combat capabilities, while also having that cutesy girly flair to her. It'd be fucking sick. One of the biggest reasons they'd be cool is they don't even really have a primary weapon like the others, being a ninja class. They'd be completely set apart from all the other fighters. Like, you wouldn't even know they're a Fire Emblem rep unless someone told you, or because you see a little picture, little sword. Now again, there are hundreds of other characters and units that could be candidates for Smash, especially when you look beyond the main cast of each game. Drog, Dorothy, Tiki, Stahl, Gaius, Frederick, there are tons, dude. And almost any one of them would be better than what we have now. But I mean, just see for yourselves. Doesn't that look way better? Like, way more interesting and diverse? And best of all, we've subtracted significantly from the sword users. Now listen, as much as I wish this was all real, I still love all the Fire Emblem characters we have. We've grown up with Roy and Ike, and Robin and Corrin are really cool in their own way, and of course everyone is here, so I would never want any of them removed. Lucina and Chrom are sort of whatever, but them as well. I just thought it'd be fun to talk about how Fire Emblem could be better represented in Smash, especially in a way that would invite more newcomers to try the source material. That being said, who do you think belongs in Smash? Who do you think would be a great Zelda or Fire Emblem rep? Let me know in the comments if you have any ideas for other characters you think fit the bill. If you like this video, go ahead, like it, and subscribe, hit the bell button. That's how you do YouTube, right?